Shem, we've arrived at week 4 in our series of lectures. This week's lecture, I entitled it, if I believe I remember correctly, Strengthening Our Greatness. Sounds kind of vague, and I'm not entirely sure what I was trying to get at. So, and I did say you can change the title if you would like.
I liked it.
But hopefully, with Hashem's help, we'll be able to set a few ideas and principles that would help us strengthen who we are. And I think it's a great segue because you were just talking about a topic with the Rebbetzin, and Baruch Hashem, I think this will kind of also fit into that same idea. So we'll start off as I usually do with a story. And the story is about the great eagle.
Eagle?
An eagle. There was an eagle soaring in the sky. The eagle is the king of all birds. And unfortunately, this eagle ran out of prey. I ran out of food. He couldn't find anything what to eat. Searching the sky, searching the ground, he can't find anything. So he decides to go to the closest city nearby. And he uses his sense of smell, and he finds the first dumpster in the city, and he dives into it, and there the eagle starts searching for food in the dumpster. Now nearby this dumpster lived a rooster. And that dumpster was the rooster's dumpster. That's where the rooster got his food. And so one morning, he wakes up to a crash in his dumpster. He comes out and he looks, and he sees the eagle, who's the king of all birds, so his king is eating out of his dumpster. He says, wow, the king came to my house to eat from my food, from my dumpster. Me and the king? Looks like we're friends. We're buddies. So he climbs up right next to where the eagle is into the dumpster eating, and he climbs over next to him, gives him a little tap, and starts to eat from the same dumpster. The eagle sees this rooster here. It's not befitting for the rooster to sit next to his eagle, so he spreads his wings wide, knocks the rooster off. And he says, who does this king think he is? This is my dumpster. So he climbs right back on top and starts to eat from his dumpster again. And the eagle sees he's not getting anywhere with this rooster, so he takes a big piece of food from this dumpster and jumps to the closest roof, and he starts to eat on the roof. Now, roosters can't really fly, but the rooster says, hold on, this king and me, we eating from the same dumpster, we're eating the same food, he came to me, we're the same. And so the rooster takes his food and starts to jump, hop, skip until he gets onto that roof as well. And he sits right next to the eagle again, taps him, and starts to eat the food right next to him. The eagle has had enough of this. He knows that him and the rooster are nothing alike. And so this time, he spreads his wings, and he starts to soar higher and higher and higher into the sky. And this time, the rooster had no way of following. In this mashal, in this parable, the mashal is that we, the Jewish people, are the eagle. And sometimes we have to do the same thing that non-Jews must do. We need to eat, we need to drink, we need to sleep, we need to go to school, we need to go to college, we need to go to work, we need to make money. And so now, the Goyim can think the Jews and us are the same. It's all the same. Unfortunately, sometimes the Jew can think there's no difference between me and the non-Jew. But then the Jew remembers that he has wings that can fly, that he can soar to the heavens, as he has a direct channel to God himself. I think the story speaks volumes of how we are supposed to look at ourselves. I, for one, can talk to you about my experiences. I attended New York University. I've worked in the hospital systems, different hospitals throughout New York City for over 10 years now. And sometimes, you can have a very good work relationship, you have very good friends in college, and you just feel that you're becoming one, close. But it's always so important to remember that yes, we can be friends, and yes, we can eat from the same dumpster, and yes, we can sit in the same classroom. But in the end of the day, we're very different. We have a very higher soul in us. I tell you, in my experiences, and you experience this as well, as an Orthodox Jew in this world, you'll always be stopped and asked questions. Why do you do certain things? I've never stopped a Catholic and asked them why to do X, Y, and Z. But I've been stopped millions of times to ask, why do you wear a kippah? Do you wear those fringes of strings under your garments? How come some people wear it out? Why some Jews wear side curls? Why some wear hats? Why some wear like this? Do you also have those prayer boxes I once saw someone wear? What does this mean? What does that mean? Why do you eat matzah on Passover?
So many questions.
Why so many questions? Because everybody knows that there's greatness in being a Jew. Everyone. Recently, I did a jury duty here on Queens Boulevard at the Kew Gardens, the courtrooms, and everyone in the courtroom kept saying, "Oh, I wish I was Jewish," because on Friday I got out at 2:00 instead of finishing. But I never said I wish I'd be anything else. I didn't say anything to anyone. I didn't say anything. In fact, I came over to the court officer and told them, it's going to be Shabbat at around 4:30 at that time. So I said I can stay till around 2 because I got to travel back to Rockaway. So, and she was like, okay, let me think about it. And then the next day on Tuesday, she came over and she says, you know what? You don't even have to stay till 2. Why don't you leave at 12 when there's lunch? I was like, that's even better. I asked for 2. I was told 12. You see, they know. They know that we're different. They know that we're special. And sometimes we forget.
Some of them are very racist.
Sometimes, now where did the racism come from? Why are they anti-Semites? We already know. The Torah tells us, Pirkei Avot tells us, that the day that we got the Torah, on that day, the rest of the world got jealous. On that day, they
didn't want it.
They didn't. But even though you don't want something, if someone else got it, you can still be upset about it. Now, this is not to say that there are many good people out there. In fact, I've had people who tell me, oh, your Shabbat is so amazing. I wish I had it. So why don't you do it? Then you go to take away from your phones. I can't do it. It's too hard. It's not 1, 2. I have this multiple times. People told me that. I'm so jealous that you guys have the family orientation and the meal once a week with everybody sitting together. And so it must be amazing. I said it is. So you try it. Nah, it can't work. Right? So they know that there's something about a Jew, and there's something that's about them, and there's differences. In the world, there are different people, there are different ways, different thoughts, there are different things. And a Jew is very, very different. And we have to remember that. There was a secular Israeli and a girl who finished her tour of service in the Israeli army and decided, like many young Israelis, to go backpacking through Europe, through Asia. And she ended up in a city in India. And she was looking for some spirituality, as she was Jewish, but she never had any connection to Judaism. And she found a cult with a guru. And she was mesmerized by the guru and his explanations of life, and how to meditate, and how to do this, and how to do that. Until eventually, she became the guru's star pupil, and eventually became engaged to him. And now her parents in Israel hear about this. They were never pro-Judaism to learn, to do mitzvot or anything. But now that they heard about this, they got a little worried where their daughter went. She joined the cult. She's marrying the guru. They wanted to talk to her. And they would say, please come home. And she said, no, I can't. I'm very into this thing. I'm very into this religion here. And I have a lot to learn. She had a brother. His name was Ari. And he also grew up in the same house, very secular, but a couple of years back he became religious, and he went to yeshiva. And his parents were very upset when he became religious. They were upset, as they were secular. And but at this point they called and they said, please help us with your sister. We can't get through to her. She's about to marry someone we don't know who, what she's doing. So he called his sister and he was speaking to her and begging her to please come back to Israel for a week. If she wants to go back, it's her business, but at least to close out her affairs. She had some loans, she had some different things. So she agreed to come back for a week. She comes back for the week, and his plan was that he'll take her to some religious sites in Israel, to the Kotel, to different places, some rabbis, and hopefully maybe we can get her back. And on one of his trips with her, he took her. He said, "I have to go pray mincha," and that shul was supposed to be one of the rabbi. There was a very dynamic speaker, and he was hoping that the rabbi would be there and she would come in and she would hear him. Maybe she'll get to speak a little bit to him, and hopefully something would click. So he goes there. He says, "You can wait in the ladies section. I'll finish mincha. It's 15 minutes, and then we'll continue on our way." She says, "No problem." She goes. She sits there, and that day that rabbi wasn't in the shul. Whenever he was busy with something else, he wasn't there. So between mincha and aravit, a young kollel guy got up and he started to speak about the laws of hashavat avedah. If someone loses an object, how we find it, and we have to not just use it, take it. Sometimes we have to find identifying marks and try to return it. And he was speaking about this laws. Ari felt it was a lost opportunity. The week finished, and this girl went back to India, went back to her fiance, and went back to her religious cult that she was in. And it was mere days before her wedding that she was walking with her fiance in the streets. And all of a sudden they found a fanny pack, one of those tourists wear. And they stop and they find it. And her fiance, who's the guru of this cult, he takes the pack and he sees there's a passport in there, there are visas in there, licenses, clearly names, pictures, everything to identify. He takes it all, he opens it, takes all the money, all the cash that's in there, he puts it in his pocket, he takes the other items and throws it in the nearest garbage can. So she says to him, "What did you just do? The passports are there, the guy's visas is probably, this person that lost it is probably going crazy, you have to get to his embassy, you have to get, it's not easy to get everything redone. Why don't we return it?" He says, "You got it all wrong. The universe is speaking to us. The universe has sent us this fanny pack with the cash, with everything. It's for us. If we would go and return it, we will now be opposing the universe. Who knows what can happen? We must go with the flow of the universe. It's for us. It was given to us. We must take it and appreciate it. You're not allowed to return it." This girl couldn't believe it. This was the spiritual head of her cult. This was the guy she was about to marry. And no sense of feeling for someone else. No sense I have to return the obligation. In fact, it's all about them. Right there on the spot, she called her brother and said, "I'm coming back to Israel." Came back to Israel, changed her life around. There is a huge difference the way we approach things and the way many members of the world approach things. The Gemara tells us a story of Rabbi Mendoza. On his doorstep, he found chickens. It wasn't his. He didn't know what to do with it. So he started to raise those chickens. They laid a lot of eggs. A lot more chickens came out. There was so much chickens. He didn't know what to do with them, so he sold them and bought animals and started to raise those animals. Many, many years later, someone comes by that city and says, "Oh, I remember I lost chickens here." So he knocks around on the doors and says, "I lost chickens." And he goes and says, "I found those chickens. I'm ready to return them." He says, "Where is it?" And there's a whole flock of cattle there. He says, "This is not my chickens." He says, "Yes, it is. I found them and I didn't know what to do, so I invested and I changed it, and this belongs to you." It's a different way of looking at life.
You're raising on something that was lost.
Yeah, because it belongs to somebody else doesn't mean I just throw it away. I invest in it. I make sure that person will get back not only what he lost, but even more. It's to care about the other person. And so we really have to remember this. Now, what happens is we go out in the world and we become accustomed to the way things are. We become used to the way things are happening. Dr. Solomon Asch was a noted psychologist. And he once made an experiment on a college campus. His subjects were students and professors. So enlightened, smart people. Dr. Asch called 7 students into a classroom. And he told them they're all going to be part of a scientific experiment. The truth is, 6 of those people were plants. And only 1 was the subject of the experiments. Dr. Ash had drawn on the blackboard, at that time it was blackboards, and he had a 10-inch line and a 12-inch line on the board. And he had the 6 plants, when asked, to say that the 10-inch line was longer than the 12-inch line.
And they were guys and the rest of the class.
So 6 were plants and 1 were the subject of the experiment. This experiment was done over and over and over again on students and professors. They found that 60% of the time, after those 6 people said the 10-inch was longer than the 12-inch, the 7th person said the 10-inch is longer than the 12-inch. Those people who said the 12-inch was longer, the other 6 people then started to argue with them and say, how can you not clearly see that the 10-inch is longer than the 12-inch? Out of those people who they argued with, another 30% changed their answer to say the 10-inch was longer than the 12-inch. The pressure to confirm, the pressure to be in society.
You know yourself that's wrong and
Very good. But you look around in society today, things that many people don't agree with and many people feel a little bit weird about, all of a sudden has become the norm of society. Dr. Ash then conducted experiment part 2. This time, 7 students, 7 people. But this time only 5 of them were plants. And 2 of them were the subjects of the experiments. And so 5 would say that the 10-inch was bigger than the 12-inch. And then the last 2, who were the subject of the experiment, now the results of this experiment was very revealing. When an individual answered that the 12-inch line was longer, he now had a second person to back him up. In this case, when those 2 people agreed that the 12-inch was longer than the 10-inch, no amount of ridicule, no amount of pressure caused those 2 people to change their mind. Because when you had a partner, when you were connected to someone with the same ideals, you were able to withstand the pressure. This concept is very important. Why? Because when we go out in the workforce, when we go out into college and stuff like that, and we're surrounded by so much pressure from society to conform to their ideas and to believe what they believe, and to think like the way they think, and act like the way they act, if we are connected to Torah, if we're connected to Hashem, if we're connected to people like us, then no matter the pressure, no matter what's going out there, you're able to withstand. You're able to say no. You're able to say that I know my stuff, I know what I'm doing, and no. So staying connected is so vital and crucial because that is your ability to keep your greatness alive. So what you girls here are doing at Orot is an amazing idea because you go out there and you might get influenced, you might see stuff, but then you come here once a week and you reconnect with each other and reconnect to the ideals and principles of the way you're supposed to live. And then it's easy to go back out there and deal with the challenges that are out there. Now, another concept that has to do with
You're on time.
another concept that has to do with strengthening our greatness is a lot of times what happens is we go to an event, we go to a Shabbaton, we go to a Challah event, we go to something that's supposed to give us a spiritual infusion, and we get a spiritual high, and we feel connected, but then a mere hours or days later, all that inspiration fades away. And it's not just us. Moshe Rabbeinu is taking the Jews out of Mitzrayim, and they're going through the Yam Suf, and they're going through the water, and even the lowliest person was able to see God. As they pointed and said, Zekeli v'anveyo, this is my God, and I will honor him. In fact, the commentators say, the Talmud tells us, that the people there saw more than the prophet Ezekiel, Yechezkel ever saw. And those people were on such a high prophecy. They saw so much. They saw God. They saw the glory. They knew. They saw the miracles. They saw the 10 plagues in Egypt. They saw what happened to the Yam Suf. They saw the Egyptians get drowned and everything. And then 3 days later, as they're traveling through the desert,
They lose it.
they complain that there's no water. You just saw God 3 days ago. Don't you know He'll give you water? All of a sudden, the inspiration, everything that they saw, gone.
Maybe they waited too long.
More. On the same idea. Pharaoh, right? Paro. He's getting punished with the whole time, 10 times. Yam Suf, everything happens. All the Mitzrayim are destroyed, except for one. Who survives? Paro himself.
Because he asked for Moshe.
Paro survives the splitting of the sea. Remember, also the Midrash says he was very short. He was about an amma. He was very short guy.
He was a midget?
Midget. Pharaoh was a midget. The Pharaoh of the biblical Pharaoh was a midget.
Usually people say he's tall.
Nope.
And that's the
Cartoon.
the Hollywood. He was a midget. He survives.
How did he survive?
He ends up living for a very, very long time. He goes to the city of Nineveh. All right, this is a city in Mesopotamia, and this is the book of Jonah, the book of Yonah. Yonah, the prophet, is sent to Nineveh to tell the Goyim, you guys are making averot, making sins, and God wants to destroy this city. So God sends a Jewish prophet to the city of Nineveh to tell them they're doing wrong, they need to change. We're told that who was the king of that city of Nineveh? Pharaoh himself. And Pharaoh tells the people, dude, if the Jewish prophet is saying this, we gotta listen, because it's right, man. I've been through this in Egypt. There's gonna be problems.
Wait, Yonah came
So,
after?
Yonah's way later. So Yonah now tells them, Pharaoh says to them, listen, they all do teshuvah. It says in the book of Jonah, they all did teshuvah. Then, everything's okay, everyone's saved. But then we're told that a mere 40 days later, everyone went back to their sins, and the whole city of Nineveh was destroyed.
Doesn't it say that after 40 days of change, you're up?
They didn't change. They did a quick change. They made teshuvah. They survived the prophet's impending doom, and then they reverted back to their sins. And 40 days later, the whole city of Nineveh and all its people were destroyed. So what happened? Paro saw, knew. People did stuff. And then it all changed.
So Paro was scared, that's when he made them do teshuvah.
But the teshuvah was superficial. So this is a very important concept that I'm about to tell you. There's a huge difference between external inspiration and internal inspiration. You see, you go to a Shabbaton, you go to an event, you hear a rabbi speak, and it's all very nice, and you feel inspired, and you feel like you want to change. But nothing will come of it if you don't stop, think, and try to internalize it. Because an external inspiration is exactly that. It'll be there, it'll stay there for a little bit, and then it's gone. The only way to apply it to life is to put it in yourself. A group of Israelis went on a tour of South Africa, and they went into the jungles, and they went on a safari trip. And in the morning they woke up, and one of them had a snake wrapped around his leg.
I guess it's attached.
And these secular Israelis started to scream and yell what to do. They didn't know what to do, and their tour guide was not there. And this snake was starting to continue to twirl around this man and come closer and closer to squeeze him to death, and everyone's screaming. And this Israeli secular Jew says, I don't know what to do, he's going crazy. And then he remembers that whenever a Jew is about to die, he should scream, Shema Yisrael. He says Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, as if magic. It's a true story. And as if magic, this snake starts to go off him. He's saved. He gets up, and as soon as his trip is over, he goes back to Israel. He goes to Yerushalayim. He goes to learn in yeshiva, Eish HaTorah, and he changes his life. One day, one of these taxi drivers is driving in the car and it picks up a rabbi. He says, Rabbi, I have this whole story to share you. He shares this whole story that happened. So the rabbi says, so your friend became religious, yeah? He says, what about you? Why didn't you change your life? Why didn't you become religious? He said, what are you talking about? The snake never twirled on me. He's twisted on my friend. Instead of taking the message to heart, instead of putting it on himself, internalizing it, he saw it. It was nice. He has a story now to share. But to internalize it, he did not.
Question. So
Sure.
you're saying that the snake was all over this person's leg, right?
It was up his leg and then it was continuing up his body.
Right. So what was the purpose of that snake? Like, why when he said Shema Yisrael, like it suddenly came on?
I don't know why it happened or how it happened, but I can tell you what happened. And that's the story. And so the idea is, from the story, is that you really need to internalize a lesson. In fact, the great Nachmanides Ramban tells us that any time you learn something, you cannot just get up and walk away from it. You have to stop and think, how can I apply this lesson to my life? That's the only way we're really going to change. That we have the power to be really great. Rav Yaakov Galinsky, Chassidut L'Bracha, was once invited to speak. And he comes to this event. It's a huge event, and thousands of people showed up in the city in Israel. And he spoke to them, huge crowd. And there was all sorts of booths there with information about mitzvot and stuff like that. And after the event, after he spoke, he went to the people, he said, I want to speak to the event organizer. And they said, oh, you're actually the event organizer? And they brought the person who was organizing it. And he was a boy of 17 years old. And he created this huge event for thousands of people. And Raglan says, how old are you? He says, I'm 17. He says, how did you do so much? He says, I don't know, I spoke. I spoke word of mouth and spoke to people and we made it. Rav Yaakov Galinsky said here, we see that, especially in today's generation, that the youngsters have the ability to be great and influence so many and change so much and do so much. I'd like to end off this ideas, of this concept of strengthening our greatness with one more fascinating story. A farmer had 2 horses. And these 2 horses helped him with his livelihood. He had a wagon. He went around with the wagon. And these 2 horses took him around. One night, a thief broke into the farmer's barn and wanted to steal the horses. The thief took the first horse, got out of the barn, tied it on one of the trees far away, and came back now for the second horse. And as he's coming for the second horse, he knocked over something in the barn and made a huge noise. And the owner, the farmer, came out of his house to see what's going on in his barn. The thief needed to think fast on his feet. What to do? He's going to be caught. And as soon as the farmer walks into the barn, the thief went into the stable where the other horse was there, went down on all 4, and started to neigh like a horse.
Oh my God.
So the farmer says, what's going on? Who are you? He says, you won't believe it, master. I was actually your horse. I came down as a reincarnated soul, as a Gilgul, came down as a reincarnation, and today my reincarnation was fulfilled, and God changed me back into a person. He says, what a miracle! My horse was a Gilgul and you became a person today? Come into the house. He wakes up his wife. He tells the wife this miraculous story of how his horse became a person, and they put him a huge meal and they were drinking, eating l'chaim. And then he said, you know what? Because you were my horse and now you're going out into the world as a person. He goes into his closet, takes out his savings, gives him $1,000 and says, take this, live a good life, do mitzvot, keep the Torah. You know what it is. You know that you're a reincarnated soul. You have a second chance on life. And this thief says, thank you so much. He leaves this guy's house. He's got the one horse. He's got $1,000 in his envelope. And he goes. That day, the farmer wakes up. He says, now, how am I going to do my business? I need a second horse. So he goes to the market. He's walking in the marketplace. And right there is standing his horse. So he walks over to the horse and he says, horse, Oh my gosh, you were out for one day and you must have made so many averot that you became back to a horse. One day you couldn't last as a person. The story tells us the problem of being loosely affiliated. Meaning, yeah, I'm Jewish. Yeah, I sometimes go to shul. Yeah, sometimes I listen. Sometimes I keep Shabbat. You're going to turn back into a horse. If you want to stay a human, you want to stay a person, and you want to stay the great person that we're all meant to be, each and every single one of us has a soul directly from God. And that's really the difference between us and the world, is our souls are closely connected to Hashem. It's on a higher level than the other souls in the world. And in order for us to maintain that soul, in order for us to maintain our greatness, we need to internalize the inspiration that we get and continue to remain connected so we can continue to receive the inspiration and then later internalize it.